Hey Cowboys fans, let's get into it, because there's a lot to unpack with what is happening on the defensive side of the ball for the Dallas Cowboys. The run defense has shown some signs of improvement, and that's something worth noting. In certain metrics, they've climbed from being at the bottom of the league to a position that is at least respectable, particularly in yards per carry and stuff rate. Early in the season, you can see some individual performances and team adjustments making an impact. Players are shedding blocks better, linebackers are filling gaps more aggressively, and the defensive tackles are holding their ground against the run. There are even moments when the defensive front gets off the ball quickly enough to disrupt plays before they develop, which is a positive shift from last season. Some of the numbers suggest that when it comes to run defense, the Cowboys are managing to keep opposing backs under control for modest gains rather than letting them explode through the line for big chunks. In other words, they've become more disciplined and calculated in their approach, which is what you want to see from a defense trying to reestablish its identity. However, the problem is that the success against the run comes at a significant cost, because everything else in the defensive scheme is unraveling in ways that cannot be ignored. The pass defense is in serious trouble, ranking near the bottom of the league in multiple categories. Opposing quarterbacks are picking apart the secondary with ease, completing passes at high efficiency and gaining yards before the defense can react. The Cowboys' lack of consistent pressure on the quarterback is a huge factor in this. The defensive line simply isn't getting home quickly enough, forcing the secondary to hold coverage longer than they should. This leads to mistakes, blown coverages, and explosive plays against the team. What's worse is that even when the Cowboys do manage to generate pressure, it often comes too late in the down, after the quarterback has already made his read. The timing of the rush is off, the coordination is inconsistent, and the result is that the defensive scheme collapses under its own weight. Man coverage is not solving the problem either, and the all-zone approach has created a cascading effect where defenders are constantly being tested far beyond their comfort zones. When you look at individual performances, it's clear that the defensive line is doing a mixed job. Some players, particularly the top defensive tackles, are performing relatively well against the run, showing strength in one-on-one battles and maintaining gap integrity. But the pass rush remains inconsistent, and the team is not producing enough plays behind the line of scrimmage to disrupt opposing quarterbacks. Key edge rushers who were expected to create havoc are not delivering the impact that was anticipated, and that failure ripples through the rest of the defense. Linebackers, too, have struggled with assignment discipline, often appearing lost in coverage or misreading offensive formations. The secondary is the hardest hit, with safeties and cornerbacks struggling to contain receivers in space and frequently leaving passing lanes open for big gains. Injuries and limited availability of some players have compounded the issue, but even when the team is fully healthy, the execution has not been there. The players are not hitting their assignments, the defensive calls are questionable at times, and the communication between units seems inconsistent. Now let's talk about the big question. Should Matt Eberflus be fired mid-season? On one hand, you can point to the defensive numbers and say the unit is underperforming, particularly in pass defense and total points allowed. The lack of pressure, the blown coverages, the inability to adjust mid-game, all of this falls under the coach's responsibility. On the other hand, it has only been a few games. There's always an adjustment period, a window where players and coaches get acclimated to new schemes, and firing a coordinator in the first quarter of the season is rarely a productive solution. There's also the question of internal options. If Eberflus were let go, who would take over play-calling duties? The reality is that there are no clear alternatives on the current staff. Promoting someone internally would likely create more confusion rather than solve problems, especially since the assistants are aligned with the current defensive philosophy. There's no experienced, ready-made play caller who can step in and immediately improve the defense. And trying to bring someone from outside mid-season is even more complicated given the limited preparation time and the challenge of installing a new system on the fly. Even considering all that, the defense has to improve. There are certain players who are underperforming relative to expectations. Safeties are missing assignments, linebackers are often out of position, and corners are being exploited by opposing quarterbacks. Some veterans are not stepping up as leaders on the field, and the lack of accountability has been glaring. Mistakes are compounding on top of mistakes, and while some of this can be attributed to coaching, execution by the players has been poor as well. Football is a game of coordinated effort, and when either the scheme or the execution fails, the result is a defense that gives up explosive plays far too frequently. The Cowboys cannot continue to operate in this manner and expect to remain competitive in a division with strong offensive teams. The issues are systemic. It's not just one player, one unit, or one scheme. There is a need for adjustments in strategy, personnel, and perhaps mentality because the current approach is not producing results. There are some positives in the overall picture, but they are few. The defense against the run, while not perfect, has shown improvement. Some individual performances along the defensive line and in the front seven demonstrate potential. Certain situational calls have worked well, and the team has moments of solid execution. But these glimpses are overshadowed by the bigger problems in pass coverage, lack of pressure, and missed assignments across the board. The challenge for the Cowboys is that while you can fix certain aspects of a defense with coaching adjustments, other issues require more than just scheme changes. They require consistent execution and sometimes even changes in personnel. If the team hopes to be competitive in the long term, these problems must be addressed immediately, rather than hoping they will resolve on their own as the season progresses. Ultimately, the debate about firing Eberle comes down to a balance between patience and accountability. There is an argument for giving him time to adjust the defense and for allowing players to adapt to the scheme. There's also an argument that without significant improvement, the team risks continuing to give up too many big plays and losing games that could have been won with better defensive performance. Fans are frustrated because they see the flaws game after game, and the numbers back up what the eye test is telling everyone. Yet, the lack of a viable replacement makes mid-season changes nearly impossible. The team has to find a way to make the system work as it stands, improve execution, and get more impact plays from the defensive line while holding players accountable for their assignments. Otherwise, the Cowboys will be in a tough spot, and the discussion about major changes will become unavoidable by season's end. Now, looking at the bigger picture, the Cowboys' defensive struggles are not just about play calling or scheme. They're about fundamentals and execution across the board. You can design the best system in the world, but if the players are not disciplined, the results will always be subpar. The linebackers have been a particular concern. Players like Kenneth Murray, Jack Sanborn, and Dion Clark have all had moments where they look completely lost on the field. Whether it is misreading run plays, missing assignments in coverage, or failing to communicate effectively with the defensive line and secondary, these lapses are creating a cascading effect that the offense takes full advantage of. Even when the defensive line manages to hold its ground against the run, these mistakes allow quarterbacks to identify soft spots and exploit them repeatedly. Football is a game of leverage, angles, and timing, and when the second and third levels of a defense are misaligned, even small errors turn into explosive plays that shift momentum in an instant. The secondary has been equally problematic. Safeties like Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson, once considered leaders and reliable presences in the back end, have struggled significantly. Hooker and Wilson have been beaten over the top, misjudged routes, and failed to provide support when cornerbacks are exposed. Cornerbacks themselves have not been much better. Trayvon Diggs, once a lockdown presence, has had lapses that allowed opposing receivers to make crucial plays, and Darren Bland has dealt with injuries that limit his availability and effectiveness. Young players in the secondary, who are still developing, are facing a steep learning curve and are being asked to perform at a level they are not yet prepared for. This mix of underperformance, inexperience, and lack of cohesion makes the back end vulnerable. And when the front seven cannot generate consistent pressure, the result is a defense that gives up plays that should never happen at the professional level. One of the critical issues is the lack of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Pass rush is the foundation of any successful defense, and the Cowboys are failing in this area. Edge rushers have been inconsistent, and even when pressure is generated, it is often late allowing quarterbacks to throw with comfort. Defensive tackles, while strong against the run, have not consistently collapsed the pocket. The timing, technique, and alignment issues mean that quarterbacks are able to survey the field, find open receivers, and extend plays. A lack of pressure has a domino effect. It forces linebackers and defensive backs to cover longer, leading to fatigue and missed assignments, which then leads to more big plays. The absence of impactful pass rush also emboldens opposing offenses to run their game plan without hesitation, knowing that the Cowboys cannot reliably disrupt the quarterback's rhythm. It is clear that the defensive schematic choices themselves are contributing to these problems. The heavy reliance on zone coverage, while intended to protect against explosive plays, has backfired. Zone coverage requires communication, anticipation, and disciplined reads, and when these elements are lacking, the secondary is left scrambling. Man coverage, when used, is often poorly executed, with defenders giving too much space or failing to maintain leverage. The interplay between the pass rush and coverage is out of sync, leaving gaps that offenses exploit. The defense appears reactive rather than proactive, often adjusting after a mistake has already occurred rather than anticipating and neutralizing threats. This lack of cohesion and planning is frustrating to watch because it allows games to slip away despite individual moments of effort and skill. Another significant factor is accountability. Mistakes have been frequent, but the lack of responsibility for those mistakes is even more concerning. Players are not being held to high standards in practice or games, which leads to repeated errors. Whether it is poor tackling, missed coverage, or blown assignments, the errors continue week after week. This lack of accountability not only affects performance, but also morale. Teammates see mistakes go unaddressed, which can erode confidence and cohesion. Football is a team sport that demands trust and discipline, and when that trust is broken, it shows on every snap. Coaching must instill a culture where mistakes are corrected immediately and learning is continuous. Otherwise, the same problems will persist throughout the season. Personnel decisions are another area where the Cowboys must make hard choices. Some of the defensive struggles can be traced back to mismatched or underperforming players in key roles. Linebackers who cannot cover tight ends or running backs effectively, safeties who fail to read the quarterback, and corners who are not playing at their peak create vulnerabilities that offenses exploit repeatedly. Adjusting personnel may involve giving younger players more snaps, rotating veterans into different roles, or even making acquisitions if possible. Execution is the responsibility of the player, but putting the right players in the right positions is the responsibility of the coaching staff. If there is a disconnect between scheme and personnel, the result is predictable: a defense that underperforms despite the effort and talent available. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are already swirling through the NFL world after Joe Buck, the veteran broadcaster known for his usually measured commentary, reportedly made some scathing remarks about the Dallas Cowboys. While Buck has long been a respected voice in sports broadcasting, sources suggest that his recent comments have ignited a firestorm among Cowboys fans and the broader football community. According to insiders, Buck allegedly criticized the team's performance, questioning both their coaching strategy and the attitude of key players, though the exact words remain unconfirmed. The timing of the alleged comments couldn't be more combustible. The Cowboys have been under intense scrutiny this season, with analysts debating whether the team has what it takes to make a serious playoff push. If Buck's remarks are true, they could add fuel to an already heated discussion among fans, pundits, and rival teams alike. Social media is buzzing, with clips circulating and hashtags trending as diehard supporters scramble to defend a franchise they passionately cheer for. Critics, on the other hand, appear ready to echo Buck's purported sentiments, pointing to recent struggles on both offense and defense. Some speculate that Buck's criticism, if it indeed occurred, might reflect broader concerns in the NFL about the Cowboys' ability to maintain consistency. The team's star players, normally lauded for their talent and leadership, could find themselves in an unusual position, having to respond not just to opponents on the field, but also to the biting commentary of one of the sport's most recognizable voices. While it's unclear whether Buck intended his remarks to be public, or if they were misinterpreted in the heat of an off-the-cuff conversation, the rumor has already taken on a life of its own. One thing is certain: Cowboys fans are not taking this quietly. From heated debates in online forums to viral tweets, the chatter is relentless. Whether Buck's words were a calculated critique or simply an unguarded opinion, the fallout could be significant. In a league where perception often shapes narratives as much as performance, the Cowboys may soon have to navigate not only the challenges on the gridiron, but also the storm of speculation surrounding this latest controversy. As the NFL season unfolds, all eyes will be on Dallas, and everyone will be listening a little more closely to what Joe Buck and others have to say. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.